Hey guys, it's Trey. I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can. I tend to kind of ramble sometimes. For my From Accuracy to Zigzag video, the convention I've chosen to go over is the mise-en-scene or mise-en-scene. I might be saying that wrong. I'm going to refer to it as mise-en-scene from here on out. Our Making Shapely Fiction book does note that mise-en-scene was appropriated for film. For film, it sort of just refers to what makes up a scene. It actually loosely translates to place in a scene or to place in a shot. So it's everything that you see in a single shot of a scene. And for books, it's a little different, but of course, it refers to what is in the scene. And there's a lot you can do with that. Everything that makes up a scene or makes up a setting, I feel that you can help sort of create a character development or character dynamic before a character is introduced by what is in the mise-en-scene. And I guess kind of a good example of that, at least that pops into my head, would be for like The Great Gatsby. A lot of what's in Gatsby's home or the descriptions of certain rooms in his home sort of help to sell him to you as a character and to Nick, the main character, as a character before he's really introduced and before you find out much about him. There's a great scene in The Great Gatsby that has to do a lot with descriptions of a clock in a room and the passage of time, which is sort of a theme in the book. But the mise-en-scene that describes the clock and the room itself really helped to sell that theme in that moment. And as I mentioned it as well, it's in popular film, you see the mise-en-scene a lot. One example that comes to mind would be in Stranger Things, which I'm sure everyone has seen. There's a specific scene in Stranger Things in the first season where you see a couple of times a poster for the 1982 John Carpenter film The Thing. And a number of things are accomplished with that. With one, of course, it helps sell the setting, which is, the 80s. It's about, preteen boys in the 80s. The Thing is reasonably something that they would be into at that point in time. But a little bit further, The Thing, the movie The Thing, which is excellent. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. One of the main themes of The Thing is sort of paranoia and not knowing what your enemy's next move is going to be and not knowing how to combat an enemy you know very little about. And that, of course, speaks to, in Stranger Things, that context when they're fighting the Demogorgons or the 11 character herself. They don't know much about what they're dealing with, and they have to sort of hypothesize how best to deal with it, which is also the central theme of The Thing. So in that regard, the mise-en-scene is very carefully chosen for Stranger Things. It could have easily been any other 80s horror film, but it works better because it's The Thing. So to me, that speaks to setting and development pretty well. Now, as far as short stories we've read for this course, in the short story in our anchor book, Where I Work, I feel like the mise-en-scene does a lot for that story. Our main character never has to say out loud that she lives in a sort of bad area or rundown area because the mise-en-scene does that for you. Little things like she mentions she has to carry a gun. She keeps a gun in her bedside drawer, which sort of helps let you know that she may live in a dangerous area. When she describes her brother Michael and his job, it mentions that he has to pay her rent, which again sort of helps you figure out that she may not be in the best place financially without her having to outright say that. She mentions Michael drives a taxi, but she mentions, that he drives the whores downtown and that his taxi always smells of smoke. There's always cigarettes in the ashtray. Little details like that help to paint a picture of what he does and where he does it. She also mentions Michael's home as being a place where no one can come over because nobody does the dishes and there's nothing there but Bob Marley posters and dirt. Again, little things that help you deduce the type of character Michael may be, the type of company he may keep, and just the type of life that he may live without having to outright say it. It's, of course, a little different with literature because the curse of books and short stories, as we all know, is that they are made up entirely of language and nothing else, which is why, of course, it's appropriated for film. You've got specific things to look at, but with literature, you've only got certain language that you can read into or use to create certain things. So that being said, in my own writing, I tried to paint pictures as best I could to sort of help you figure out certain characters, especially in the beginning of my story, And then towards the end of my story, where my character comes across a specific setting that was once inhabited by characters that are now dead. And my short story was about a superhero that turned and started killing people. Um, I tried my best to create a picture of that home and describe the characters that are now dead and hence cannot be described based on the things that would be in their home, and kind of let that do the talking for me. Now, admittedly, I tend to write a lot and talk a lot, as you're now figuring out. And I sort of had to rigorously edit a lot of what I write, and some of my mise-en-scene was lost, and that was mainly just due to trying to meet the word count. I couldn't really cut a lot of other things, I feel, without losing the impact of the events that happened. And so I had to lose some of the mise-en-scene due to the word count. That's something I'm constantly working on, trying to say more with less words, or say things that mean more with less words, I should say. It's an ongoing process. But for my prompt to try to get everyone to play around with the mise-en-scene, it's fairly simple. I just want you to try and work out a scene where at least two characters are going to be engaging in a dialogue. In the build up to that dialogue, I would like you to try and describe things in the setting, in the atmosphere, and play to the mise-en-scene as best you can to try to give the readers a peek into what the characters are like and why this may or may not be a difficult conversation they're about to have before the conversation itself takes place. For instance, is these two people having a conversation in a living room? Or they're having a conversation in a specifically small living room with the brown table in the middle with a Bible on top. Now, the Bible on top is going to be an indicator as to how one of the characters may feel about a lot of things and how that may impact the conversation they're about to have. And were this just a living room with just a table, we would lose that dynamic. But the mise-en-scene of the Bible specifically being on the table, not just a book, but the Bible, really sort of helps to sell the character and I feel impact the conversation they're going to have. So to recap, just a setting, a prelude to a conversation, if you will, and try to use the mise-en-scene as best you can and the setting as best you can to develop the characters before the conversation starts, if that makes any sense. That's what I've got. A better man than me would edit this video. I'm not super YouTube savvy, so I apologize for the just solid stream of me talking that you've got. But I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say, and I look forward to seeing what you guys are going to post as well.